In the heart of a small Bengali village, overshadowed by newer structures yet untouched by time, stood the old banyan tree. Its roots hung like ancient curtains, and its leaves whispered secrets of bygone eras with every gust of wind. Villagers seldom ventured near after sunset. The tree was said to be the abode of Tara, a witch who had once been the village's guardian and healer but was now a whispered specter in children's stories and old wives' tales. Ananya, a 12-year-old girl with an insatiable curiosity and a bold streak that often led her into trouble, found the tree fascinating rather than fearsome. Her grandmother had told her tales of the witch, painting her as a figure of reverence rather than fear, a healer who had wielded nature's forces and spoken to the winds. These stories clashed vividly with the ominous rumors that older villagers murmured into their shawls and beards. On a particularly stormy evening in July, when the monsoon had wrapped the village in a thick gray shroud, Ananya's fascination got the better of her. With her heart pounding against her chest, not entirely from the thrill of the adventure but also the chill of the winds, she ventured out to the banyan tree. Her mother, preoccupied with securing windows and retrieving laundry before it was utterly soaked, didn't notice her slip away. As Ananya approached, the air grew dense, almost palpable with the energy that seemed to emanate from the tree itself. Lightning streaked across the sky, briefly illuminating the gnarled, twisted forms of the roots that burrowed and re-emerged from the earth like serpents of old. The ground was slick with rain, the mud grasping at her feet with each step, as if warning her to turn back. But she pressed on, driven by the kind of determination that had always marked her character. Reaching the base of the tree, she noticed something unusual, a slight unevenness in the ground near the roots, as if part of the earth had been disturbed recently. Her fingers, numb from the cold, fumbled through the mud, tracing the edges of what she soon uncovered as an old, leather-bound book. Its cover was embossed with strange symbols that seemed to flicker under the intermittent lightning, imbuing them with an ethereal glow. With a mixture of awe and trepidation, Ananya pulled the tome free from its earthen prison and wiped the cover with the corner of her shirt. The rain had eased now, replaced by a silence so profound that even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Thunder rolled in the distance, a gentle rumble that seemed almost encouraging. Clutching the book tightly against her chest, Ananya ran back home, her mind racing with possibilities. The door creaked shut behind her, and she leaned back against it, panting, the book still secure in her grasp. She couldn't wait to explore its contents, to uncover the secrets of Tara, and perhaps, to understand why the village still feared the banyan tree that had watched over it for centuries. Inside, the warm glow of lanterns and the scent of spices did little to dispel the chill of the night's adventure. Ananya knew that this night was just the beginning. As the storm outside dwindled to a murmur and the village drifted into uneasy sleep, the pages of the old book seemed to turn almost imperceptibly, as if inviting her to delve into the lore that had been lost to time. The night grew deeper, the world outside the small hut fell silent, and the rain tapered to a gentle drizzle that played a soft, rhythmic song on the tin roof. Ananya sat on the floor, her legs crossed, the mysterious tome open in her lap. A kerosene lamp flickered gently beside her, casting dancing shadows on the walls, as if the ancient spirits disturbed by her discovery were pacing in her tiny room. As she leafed through the dusty pages, Ananya realized this was no ordinary book. It was a grimoire, a witch's book of spells, meticulously penned in an elegant script that wove through the pages like threads of silver. Each page was a patchwork of arcane symbols, diagrams of celestial alignments, and detailed descriptions of herbs. Here was a record of Tara's knowledge, her powers bound in parchment and leather. The first spell that caught Ananya's eye was titled To Heal the Weary Heart. The ingredients were simple, most of them herbs she knew grew in her own garden or in the wild patches at the village edge. There was lavender for calming, rosemary for mental clarity, and chamomile to soothe. The spell required these to be brewed into a tea under the light of the full moon, invoking Tara's blessings for healing. Ananya was no stranger to the ailments of the heart. Her own mother had been a shadow of herself since the fever took her strength. The doctors had shrugged, helpless after their medicines failed, leaving her mother to languish in a perpetual state of exhaustion. Here, perhaps, was a sliver of hope, nestled within the age-worn pages of Tara's grimoire. Determined, Ananya set the book aside and prepared for the next full moon. Days turned into nights, and she gathered the necessary herbs, her anticipation building with the waxing moon. She spoke to no one about the book or her plans. This secret was hers alone, guarded as fiercely as the embers of the small fire she tended each night. Finally, the night of the full moon arrived. Ananya set up a small altar in the backyard, just under the open sky where the moon shone brightest. With trembling hands, she placed the herbs in a small clay pot, her every movement deliberate, respecting the sanctity of the ritual she was about to perform. As she lit the fire beneath the pot, she whispered the incantations written in the grimoire, her voice steady but low, infused with a power she felt flowing through her, as if the very air around her vibrated with ancient magic. The tea brewed as she chanted, the aroma filling the night air with a calming essence. Once done, she allowed it to cool under the moonlight, collecting the lunar blessings. With the potion prepared, she returned inside, the small ceramic cup cradled carefully in her hands as she approached her mother's bedside. Her mother, weak and yet always smiling at her daughter, watched with tired eyes as Ananya came closer. "What's this, my child?" she asked, her voice a whisper of leaves. "A tea to ease your heart, Ma," Ananya replied, her confidence bolstered by the night's success. "Drink, please." Her mother sipped the brew, her brow furrowing slightly in curiosity at the unfamiliar taste. Ananya watched anxiously as her mother finished the cup and lay back against her pillows. For a moment, nothing happened, and Ananya's heart sank. But then, a subtle change came over her mother. Color crept back into her cheeks, and her eyes seemed clearer, brighter even. "Ananya," her mother breathed, a strength returning to her voice that had been missing for months. "I feel lighter, somehow." "What was in that tea?" "Just some herbs, Ma," Ananya replied, a mysterious smile playing on her lips. She decided not to reveal the full truth just yet, not until she understood more about the power she had just wielded. As her mother drifted into a peaceful sleep, the first in many restless nights, Ananya returned to her room. The grimoire lay open, as if waiting for her next question, the next spell to be tried. With the newfound respect, she realized she had stepped onto a path that promised to change her life forever. She was no longer just a village girl, she was a keeper of ancient secrets, and she had a legacy to continue. As the lamp burned low, casting long shadows across the room, Ananya pored over the grimoire, eager to learn, to grow, to heal. The witch's lore was hers now, a beacon in the dark, guiding her towards her destiny. In the days that followed, the village of Jalakathi slowly began to notice the change in Ananya's mother. Word spread from neighbor to neighbor about her miraculous recovery. Skepticism was met with astonishment as they saw her walking about her garden, tending to the marigolds and jasmines, her laughter once again a melody that enriched the air. People whispered, speculated, and finally, one by one, they approached Ananya, their curiosity piqued, their needs pressing. It was old Mrs. Gupta who approached her first. A kind soul, she had been plagued by arthritis for years, her knuckles swollen, her movements pained. She came to Ananya one morning, leaning on her wooden cane, her eyes hopeful. "Child, I heard about your mother. Could you help an old woman with her aches?" Ananya, feeling the weight of her newfound responsibility, invited Mrs. Gupta into their humble home. She consulted the grimoire discreetly, careful to keep the actual source of her knowledge hidden. The book spoke of an ointment made from ginger and turmeric, enchanted under a waning moon to ease pain and inflammation. That night, under the silver light of the diminishing moon, Ananya whispered the incantations and mixed the ointment with reverence and hope. The next day, she handed a small jar of the golden mixture to Mrs. Gupta. "Apply this twice a day," she instructed, "and think positive thoughts while you do it." Days later, Mrs. Gupta was back, walking straighter, her smile broad and pain-free. "It's a miracle," she declared in front of a gathering crowd. "The pain is much less, and I can move again like I used to when I was young." The news of Ananya's healing hands spread like wildfire. Before long, she found herself a novice healer in the village, her every evening filled with neighbors seeking remedies for their maladies. Ananya turned to the grimoire each time, carefully selecting spells and potions, increasingly confident in her role but ever mindful of the grave responsibility the knowledge entailed. Each successful remedy bolstered her reputation but also deepened her bond with the grimoire. She began to feel as though Tara's spirit was guiding her, whispering secrets and corrections to her novice mistakes from over her shoulder. The witch of the old tales, once feared, was now becoming a symbol of hope and healing through Ananya. One evening, as the monsoon retreated, leaving behind clear skies and a gentle breeze, a more daunting challenge presented itself. A young boy, no older than 5, was brought to her doorstep, his small body burning with fever, his eyes glazed in delirium. The village doctor had tried everything, but the fever persisted. His mother, a widow, placed her son in Ananya's arms, her eyes brimming with desperation. Ananya felt a wave of panic. This was beyond anything she had dealt with before. She rushed to the grimoire, her hands trembling as she turned the pages. There, under a chapter titled "To Quell the Fever's Rage," she found what she hoped would be salvation. The spell required a concoction of neem leaves, black pepper, and holy basil, to be brewed in rainwater collected under the light of a full moon. With the ingredients in hand, Ananya prepared the brew with utmost care, chanting the spell, her voice firm, imbuing the concoction with all her will and hope. The potion simmered on the stove, the steam carrying a sharp, cleansing scent throughout the house. After cooling the mixture, she fed it to the boy with a tiny spoon, his mother watching every gulp. Hours passed, and the village seemed to hold its breath. Night fell, and with it, a cool breeze swept through the village, as if it too prayed for the boy's recovery. By midnight, the fever broke. The boy awoke, his eyes clear, his first words a whisper of thirst. His mother wept with relief, hugging Ananya tightly, thanking her over and over. Ananya stood outside her home later that night, looking up at the starlit sky. The success was a relief, but it was also a profound moment of realization. The power she wielded was real, potent, and alive with Tara's ancient spirit. She was not just playing at magic, she was reviving a legacy, becoming a conduit for something much larger than herself. But with each spell cast, a lingering worry shadowed her thoughts. Such power was not without its price, and Ananya wondered what it might one day cost her. The monsoon clouds had given way to a clear sky, and the village of Jalakathi lay silent under the watchful eyes of a crescent moon. The past weeks had seen Ananya become a beacon of hope for many, her home a sanctuary for those seeking relief from their ailments. Yet, the night air was heavy with an unspoken tension, a prelude to the unfolding events that would test Ananya more than any fever or pain ever could. As she lay in her small bed, the grimoire resting on a wooden stool beside her, Ananya found sleep elusive. Her thoughts spiraled around the magic she wielded and the people she had helped. It was in this quiet solitude that she first felt it, a subtle shift in the air, a cooling breeze that seemed to whisper secrets in a language only her soul could understand. The candle by her bedside flickered as if in response to an unseen presence, and a shiver ran down her spine. Then, she heard it, a voice, soft yet clear, resonant within the confines of her room. "Ananya," it called, a lilt of familiarity in its tone that felt comforting yet commanding. She sat up, her eyes wide, searching the dim corners of her room. The shadows seemed to dance, coalescing into a form by the window where the moonlight streamed in. "Tara?" Ananya's voice was a mix of fear and awe as the figure before her gained clarity, manifesting into the semblance of a woman, regal and ethereal, her eyes pools of ancient wisdom. "Yes, child," the apparition spoke, her voice both in the room and in Ananya's mind. You have done well to revive the healing arts of the old, but you must prepare, for greater challenges lie ahead. Ananya, clutching the blanket to her chest, found her voice. What challenges, Tara? Am I not doing as the grimoire instructs? Tara's form moved closer, her presence enveloping the room with a palpable energy. The book you wield is powerful, more than you know. It contains secrets that many would wish to possess for less noble purposes. You must guard it, for a darkness grows near, seeking the power it holds. The gravity of Tara's warning settled on Ananya's shoulders like a mantle. How do I protect it? And from whom? Trust in your strength and in the wisdom of the book. There will come a time when you must stand firm and face the darkness. But fear not, for I will guide you when the need arises. Before Ananya could ask more, the figure began to fade, dissolving into the moonlit air with a final whisper, "Be vigilant, Ananya." The candle flickered back to a steady flame, and Ananya sat in silence, the weight of her destiny pressing upon her. She realized then that her journey with the grimoire was not just about healing the physical wounds of her fellow villagers, but also about protecting a legacy of immense power. The next morning, Ananya approached her tasks with a newfound determination. She secured the grimoire in a wooden chest with a lock, the key worn around her neck on a sturdy chain. She continued her healing work, but her senses were sharpened, alert to any sign of the forewarned darkness. Days passed, and one afternoon, as she collected herbs near the edge of the village, she noticed a figure watching her from the shadows of the trees. A chill ran down her spine, not from the cool breeze but from the piercing gaze that seemed to see through her very soul. The figure was cloaked, its features obscured, but its intent was palpable. With a steady breath, Ananya remembered Tara's words and approached the figure. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice steady. The figure stepped forward, the light revealing sharp, calculating eyes. "Perhaps you can, young healer. I've heard much about your talents. They say you possess a knowledge that is quite unique." Ananya's heart raced, but her face remained composed. "I offer help to those in need. If you are sick, I can try to heal you." The figure smiled, a thin, knowing smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, I am not sick, but I am indeed in need. I seek knowledge, the kind that could perhaps be found in an old book. Maybe you have come across such a thing?" Ananya felt the grimoire's weight against her chest, beneath her clothes, hidden but ever present. "I'm sorry, I don't know of any book. My knowledge comes from my grandmother and the elders." The figure studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "I see. Perhaps I was mistaken." With that, he turned and disappeared into the trees as silently as he had appeared. Shaken, Ananya hurried home, Tara's warning echoing in her mind. The encounter had not been a mere chance, it was the beginning of the struggle she had been foretold. As she prepared for the coming trials, Ananya knew she was no longer just a student of the grimoire but its guardian, and she would protect it with all the courage Tara's legacy had instilled in her. The days following the mysterious stranger's visit were tense and thick with unease for Ananya. She felt every shadow might be watching her, every whispering wind a potential spy. The grimoire remained securely locked away, its contents a heavy secret in her heart. She wore the key around her neck at all times, tucked under her clothes, its cold metal pressed against her skin, a constant reminder of her duty. Despite her fears, Ananya continued her healing practices. The villagers, unaware of the dangers that now lurked, came to her with their ailments and worries. With each person she helped, Ananya felt her resolve strengthen, even as the darkness encroached more each day. Strange occurrences began to unfold. A well-known tree in the village square withered overnight, livestock became restless, and shadows seemed to linger longer than natural, as if reluctant to leave the corners they crept into. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Ananya visited the old banyan tree. She felt a strange pull to the place where she had found the grimoire, as if the tree itself might offer some guidance. As she approached, the air grew unnaturally cold, and the familiar whispers of the leaves sounded more like hushed warnings. Under the banyan tree, Ananya sat down, her back against the rough bark. She closed her eyes and tried to connect with the spirit of Tara, seeking comfort or perhaps a sign. Instead, a sudden vision seized her, a view of the village enveloped in a dark mist, its tendrils creeping into homes, seeping into dreams, turning them into nightmares. Ananya's eyes snapped open, her breath quick and shallow. The vision had felt too real, a premonition of what was to come if she failed to protect the grimoire. She knew she needed more than just reactive measures. She needed to understand the nature of the darkness seeking the book. Remembering a spell in a grimoire titled To Reveal the Unseen, Ananya rushed home. She prepared her space with candles and the few sacred items she possessed, a ring that had belonged to her grandmother, a feather she had found on an especially good day, and a handful of rice as a symbol of prosperity and protection. She formed a circle, placed the items at cardinal points, and sat in the middle with the grimoire open in front of her. Whispering the incantations, Ananya sprinkled a circle of salt around her and waited. The candle flames flickered as if in response to her words, and a gust of wind rattled the windows. Then, the air stilled, and the flame steadied. From the pages of the grimoire, a soft, silvery light began to emanate, growing brighter with each passing second. It was not merely a light, but a presence, filling the room with a sense of ancient power. In the illuminated silence, Ananya spoke aloud, her voice firm, "Show me the source of the darkness that threatens." The light from the book pulsed once, twice, then exploded in a brilliant flash that cast shadows behind every object in the room, making them twist and elongate grotesquely. As her eyes adjusted, Ananya saw the shadows take form into a single, dark silhouette against her wall. It was the cloaked figure of the stranger, but now she saw him surrounded by swirls of dark mist, his eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. The vision lasted only a moment before the room returned to normal, but the impact lingered. Ananya now knew the face of her enemy, a sorcerer, cloaked in darkness, who sought the power of the grimoire for his own nefarious purposes. Determined to protect her village and the legacy of Terra, Ananya began to prepare. She revisited the spells for protection and warding in the grimoire, fortifying her home and herself. She crafted amulets for the villagers, enchanting them with protective spells, distributing them under the guise of good luck charms. With each protective spell she cast, the shadows around the village seemed to recoil, as if biding their time. Ananya knew that a confrontation was inevitable, and she could only hope that when the time came, her powers would be enough to protect all that she held dear. As she fortified the last of the charms, she steeled herself for the battle ahead, her resolve as unyielding as the ancient banyan tree under which her journey had begun. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere in Jalakathi became charged with a palpable tension, like the heavy air before a storm. Ananya's preparations had woven a network of protection throughout the village, her charms and spells creating a subtle shimmer in the air that only she could see. The villagers felt it too, though they could not name it, describing a newfound sense of safety and warmth despite the growing shadows. However, Ananya knew that these measures were but a temporary shield. The real test awaited her, a confrontation with the dark sorcerer who had marked her and the grimoire for his own. She spent her nights poring over the ancient texts, strengthening her knowledge and her resolve. The grimoire was no longer just a book, it was a mentor, a guardian, and a friend. Her chance came on the night of a lunar eclipse, a celestial event Terra had described in the grimoire as a time of potent magical energies, both to bind and to release. Under the shadow of the earth, the line between light and dark would blur, providing the perfect arena for her battle. Ananya prepared meticulously, gathering rare herbs, drawing protective circles, and invoking Terra's spirit for guidance. As the moon began its slow march across the sky, cloaked in the earth's shadow, the air thrummed with energy. Ananya stood at the center of a large clearing by the banyan tree, the site of her fateful discovery, and now, she hoped, the place where her struggle would end. She had chosen this spot for its power, its connection to Terra, and its significance in her journey. The sorcerer arrived as the eclipse reached totality, the moon a haunting blood red. He was a silhouette against the darkness, his approach silent but his intent malevolent. "You have something that belongs to me," he called out, his voice a cold whisper that made the night air frost over. Ananya, standing her ground, replied with a calm she did not feel. "The grimoire belongs to no one but itself. I am its keeper, and I will protect it with my life." A laugh, dark and chilling, echoed through the trees. Brave words for a young girl. Let us see if you possess the strength to back them. The sorcerer raised his hands, and the darkness around them seemed to coalesce into tangible forms, shadows twisting into spectral wolves that circled Ananya, their eyes glowing red. Without hesitation, Ananya drew from the earth's energy, her hands glowing with a radiant light. She chanted a spell of binding from the grimoire, and beams of light shot from her palms, encircling the wolves and turning them to mist. The sorcerer, seeing his first attack thwarted, snarled in anger and raised the stakes. He uttered a curse that darkened the sky further, attempting to drown the clearing in unnatural darkness. Ananya responded with a spell of illumination, a powerful incantation that brought forth a brilliant white light from the moon above, dispelling the darkness. They exchanged spells and counters, the air crackling with magical energy. Ananya, fueled by her duty and the spirit of Terra, felt a surge of power she had never known. She was more than a healer now, she was a protector, a force of light against the creeping dark. As the eclipse began to wane, Ananya knew it was time to end this. She gathered all her strength and channeled it into one final spell, a forbidden incantation that risked much but promised more, a spell of sealing, to bind the sorcerer's powers. Whispering the words, she felt the grimoire's energy surge through her, a torrential river of power that threatened to overwhelm but also to empower. The spell struck the sorcerer, enveloping him in a cage of radiant light. He fought against the bonds, his face contorted in rage, but the spell was too strong. Slowly, his struggle ceased, and he was left powerless, his dark magic sealed within him. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Ananya collapsed, exhausted but victorious. The villagers, who had sensed the battle even if they had not seen it, came to her aid, their faces awash with relief and newfound reverence. They had been spared a darkness that would have consumed them, saved by a young woman who was no longer just Ananya but a guardian of their hopes and a keeper of ancient powers. The battle was over, but Ananya knew her journey was not. She had defended the grimoire and her village, but the world was vast, and darkness lurked in many corners. As she recovered under the watchful care of her people, she planned her next steps, ready to face whatever challenges awaited, with the grimoire by her side and Terra's spirit guiding her. As dawn broke over the village of Jalakathi, the early morning sun cast gentle rays that shimmered against the dew-laden grass, reflecting a night of tumult back into a day of peace. Ananya sat at the base of the old banyan tree, the site of her confrontation with the dark sorcerer now nothing more than a serene landscape bathed in the soft light of a new beginning. The villagers, once fearful of the powers Ananya might unleash, now approached her with reverence and gratitude. They brought offerings of flowers and food, tokens of their appreciation for the darkness she had vanquished. Ananya accepted these gifts with humility, aware that her role as guardian of the grimoire was far from over. In the weeks that followed, she dedicated herself to mastering the arts contained within the ancient tome. She delved deeper into its teachings, not only to enhance her own abilities but to prepare herself for the responsibility of passing on this knowledge. The idea of teaching others was daunting yet necessary. She knew that the safety of the grimoire and the wisdom it held could not rest on her shoulders alone. Ananya started small, inviting interested villagers to learn the basics of herbology and healing. Among them was a young boy, Nikhil, whose keen interest and intuitive understanding of the natural world made him a standout pupil. Ananya saw in him the spark of a future guardian, someone who could one day help shoulder the burden of the grimoire. The training was rigorous. Ananya taught her students not only how to harness the energies of the earth but also how to respect and protect the balance of nature. Lessons were conducted under the banyan tree, where the air seemed thick with Terra's presence, encouraging and guiding them. The tree itself had become a symbol of their learning, its sprawling roots a reminder of the depth of knowledge they were striving to attain, its vast canopy a protectorate under which they could safely explore the mysteries of the grimoire. However, the peace was periodically shaken by reminders that darkness still lingered in the world. News reached the village of distant lands where shadows gathered, threatening to engulf the unwary in their malevolent grasp. Ananya knew that her fight against the darkness might require her to venture beyond the borders of Jalakathi. Preparing for such a journey meant more than physical readiness, it required a community fortified against any future threats. Ananya spent months strengthening the village's defenses, casting protective spells that were more potent than before, woven through with the power she had harnessed during her battle with the sorcerer. She taught the villagers simple wards and charms to maintain these defenses, empowering them to protect their homes and loved ones. The day came when Ananya felt the pull of her destiny tugging her beyond the familiar paths of her village. With Nikhil ready to continue her work in Jalakathi, she set out to confront the creeping shadows that threatened distant corners of the world. Her departure was marked by a ceremony under the banyan tree, the villagers gathering to bid her farewell with a mix of sadness and pride. Ananya's journey was long and fraught with challenges. In distant villages and forgotten towns, she encountered darkness in many forms, spirits corrupted by ancient grievances, sorcerers seduced by the lure of forbidden magic, and creatures of shadow that slipped through cracks in the world's fabric. Each confrontation tested her skills, her resolve, and the teachings of the grimoire. Throughout her travels, Ananya kept a journal, documenting her experiences and the lessons she learned from each new challenge. This journal grew into a tome of its own, a companion to the grimoire, filled with practical knowledge and insights that would one day benefit future guardians. Years passed, and Ananya's legend grew. Tales of the wandering healer who could banish darkness with a touch, who spoke with the authority of the ancients, spread far and wide, inspiring others to seek the light. Finally, Ananya returned to Jalakathi, her journey come full circle. She found the village thriving, Nikhil now a skilled healer and guardian in his own right. Together, under the banyan tree, they opened her journal and added it to the cache of knowledge protected by the grimoire. The legacy of Tara, carried on by Ananya, would continue to grow, a beacon of light against the darkness, a testament to the power of knowledge and the unyielding spirit of those who wield it for good.